The dust settled around her worn boots as Amelia Zimmerman watched the wagon disappear into the shimmering heat of the afternoon, carrying away the only family she had left in this world. And she realized with a clarity that felt like a knife to the chest that her stepbrother had finally made good on his promise to be rid of her. The trading post behind her stood weathered and silent in the summer heat of 1878, its wooden boards bleached gray by countless Utah summers, and she clutched her single carpetbag tighter as the reality of her situation began to sink in. Her stepbrother had convinced her they were stopping for supplies on their way to California, that she should wait outside while he negotiated for provisions. And then he had simply climbed back onto that wagon with his new wife and driven away without so much as a backward glance. Amelia was 22 years old, alone in Alta, Utah, with $3.17 to her name. No family, no prospects, and nowhere to go. The trading post owner had watched the whole thing from his doorway, shaking his head with something between pity and disgust before retreating back inside, clearly wanting no part of whatever drama had just unfolded. She stood there for what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, trying to decide what to do next, when the sound of hoofbeats made her turn. The rider came from the direction of the mountains, his horse picking its way carefully down the rocky trail that led to the main road. Even from a distance, Amelia could see he sat his saddle with the easy confidence of a man who had spent more of his life on horseback than on foot. As he drew closer, she made out a tall figure in dusty work clothes, a wide-brimmed hat pulled low against the sun, and a face that looked like it had been carved from the same red rock that surrounded them. He reined in his horse a few yards from where she stood, and for a long moment they simply looked at each other. He was perhaps 25 or 26, with dark hair that curled slightly at his collar and eyes the color of whiskey in firelight. There was something careful in the way he held himself, like a man who had learned to read situations quickly and act accordingly. "You waiting for someone?" His voice was low and rough, like gravel under wagon wheels. Amelia lifted her chin, refusing to let him see how close she was to tears. "No." "You need help, I can manage." He glanced down the empty road where the wagon had disappeared, then back at her, and she saw understanding dawn in his expression. "They left you." It was not a question, and Amelia found she could not answer it anyway. Her throat had closed up with all the words she wanted to say, all the anger and hurt and fear that had been building since the moment she realized what her stepbrother had done. The cowboy dismounted in one fluid motion, and Amelia took an instinctive step back. He noticed and stopped, holding up one hand in a gesture of peace. "Name is Lucas Pritchard. I have a ranch about 10 miles north of here. Small operation, nothing fancy, but it is honest work and honest living." "I did not ask," Amelia said, but her voice lacked conviction. "No, but you are standing in the middle of nowhere with a carpetbag and no horse, so I figure you might need to know there are decent folk around." He paused, studying her face. "When did you last eat?" The question caught her off guard, and her stomach chose that moment to remind her that it had been since dawn, nearly 12 hours ago. Lucas Pritchard saw the answer in her face and shook his head. "Come on. Trading post has decent enough food. We will get you something to eat, and then we can figure out what comes next." "I have money," Amelia said quickly, not wanting charity. "Did not say you did not." He gestured toward the trading post. "But standing out here in the heat is not going to help either of us think clearly." He had a point, much as she hated to admit it. Amelia picked up her carpetbag and followed him toward the building, very aware of the curious looks they were drawing from the few people on the street. Alta was not much of a town, really, just a collection of buildings clustered around the trading post and a few mining operations in the nearby mountains. It was the kind of place people passed through on their way to somewhere else, which made it all the more cruel that her stepbrother had chosen it as the place to abandon her. Inside the trading post, Lucas Pritchard ordered food for both of them, and despite her pride, Amelia found herself grateful when a plate of beans and cornbread appeared in front of her. They sat at a rough wooden table near the window, and she ate slowly, trying to make sense of what had just happened and what she was going to do about it. "You got people somewhere?" Lucas asked after a while. Amelia shook her head. "My parents died 3 years ago. Fever. My mother had remarried after my father passed, and when she died, her new husband and his son took me in. Or I thought they had. Turns out they were just waiting for a convenient place to be rid of me. That is a low thing to do. Yes." She set down her fork, suddenly no longer hungry despite the gnawing emptiness in her stomach. "But here we are." Lucas was quiet for a moment, turning his coffee cup between his hands. "I meant what I said about the ranch. It is just me out there right now. I could use help with the cooking and such. I can pay you, give you a place to stay. Nothing inappropriate," he added quickly, seeing her expression. "There is a small cabin on the property, used to be for the foreman back when the place was bigger. It is yours if you want it." "You do not know me," Amelia said carefully. "Why would you offer me that? Because someone left you at a trading post in the middle of nowhere, and that is not right." His eyes met hers, steady and serious. "And because I know what it is like to be alone with nowhere to go." There was a story there Amelia could tell, but she did not press. Instead, she considered his offer, weighing her limited options. She could try to find work here in Alta, but the town was small and she had seen the way the trading post owner looked at her. She could try to make her way to a larger town, but $3 would not get her far, and traveling alone was dangerous. Or she could accept this stranger's offer and hope that he was as decent as he seemed. "The cabin has a lock," she asked finally. "It does, and I will give you the only key. And you expect me to cook and clean, and help with the chickens and the garden if you are willing. I can teach you other ranch work if you have an interest, but I will not force it." Amelia looked at him for a long moment, trying to read the truth in his face. She had always prided herself on being a good judge of character, and everything about Lucas Pritchard suggested he was exactly what he appeared to be. A hard-working rancher who was offering help because it was the right thing to do. That did not mean she was not taking a risk, but then again, staying here was a risk too. "All right," she said finally, "but if you try anything improper, I will shoot you." The corner of his mouth twitched in what might have been the beginning of a smile. "Fair enough. You know how to shoot." "My father taught me." "Good. You will need that skill out here." He stood up and placed some coins on the table. "We should get going if we want to make it back before dark. You ride." "Well enough. My horse can carry double for the trip. Tomorrow I will take you into town, and we can see about getting you your own mount." They left the trading post together, and Amelia found herself sitting behind Lucas on his big bay gelding, her carpetbag secured behind the saddle. As they rode away from Alta, she looked back once at the place where her old life had ended and her new one had begun, then turned her face forward and did not look back again. The ride to Lucas's ranch took them through some of the most beautiful country Amelia had ever seen. The mountains rose up on either side of them, their peaks still touched with snow even in late summer, and the valleys between them were filled with aspen groves and meadows thick with wildflowers. The air smelled clean and sharp, nothing like the dusty heat of the town, and despite everything that had happened, Amelia felt something in her chest loosen slightly. Lucas did not talk much as they rode, but he pointed out landmarks and warned her about places where the trail was tricky. He handled his horse with easy competence, and Amelia found herself relaxing into the rhythm of the ride. her hands loosely holding onto his waist to keep her balance. As the sun began to sink toward the mountains, they crested a rise, and Amelia saw the ranch spread out below them. It was indeed small, as Lucas had said. Just a main house, a barn, a few outbuildings, and the small cabin he had mentioned, set slightly apart from the others. But it was well kept, with sturdy fences and a garden plot that looked like someone actually cared for it. "It is not much," Lucas said, and she could hear something almost apologetic in his voice. "It is beautiful," Amelia said, and meant it. He glanced back at her, and this time there was definitely a smile. "Wait until winter before you say that. These mountains get fierce cold." They rode down to the ranch, and Lucas helped her dismount before leading the horse to the barn. Amelia followed with her carpet bag, looking around with interest. Everything was neat and orderly, the kind of place that spoke to someone who took pride in their work. The cabin he showed her to was small but clean, with a bed, a table, a chair, and a small stove for heat. There was a window that looked out toward the mountains, and someone had left a quilt folded at the foot of the bed. Lucas showed her how to work the lock, handed her the only key, and then stood awkwardly in the doorway. "I will be up at dawn to start chores," he said. "You can come up to the main house whenever you are ready. Kitchen is through the back door. Help yourself to whatever you need." "Thank you," Amelia said, and was surprised to find she meant it. "For all of this." Lucas shrugged. "We all need help sometimes, no shame in that." He touched the brim of his hat. "Get some rest. Tomorrow we can figure out the details." He left, and Amelia locked the door behind him, then sat down on the bed and finally let herself cry. She cried for her parents, for the family that had rejected her, for the fear and uncertainty of her situation, and for the sheer, overwhelming relief of having somewhere safe to sleep tonight. When she was done, she washed her face in the basin of water someone had left on the table, changed into her nightdress, and crawled under the quilt. Despite her exhaustion, sleep was long in coming. She lay awake listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the ranch at night, the distant lowing of cattle, the rustle of wind through the aspen trees, the call of an owl somewhere in the darkness. And she thought about Lucas Pritchard, this stranger who had appeared like something out of a story and offered her a lifeline when she needed it most. She would be cautious, she told herself. She would keep her guard up and her wits about her. But she would also give this a chance, because what other choice did she have? And because something in Lucas's eyes had suggested he understood what it meant to be alone, to be cast adrift, and that maybe, just maybe, they could help each other find their way back to solid ground. Morning came early. Amelia woke to the sound of a rooster crowing and pale light filtering through the window. For a moment, she was disoriented, unable to remember where she was, and then it all came rushing back. She dressed quickly in her simplest dress, twisted her long, dark hair into a bun at the nape of her neck, and made her way to the main house. Lucas was already in the kitchen, making coffee on the wood stove. He looked up when she came in, and she saw surprise flicker across his face as if he had not quite expected her to show up. "Morning," he said. "Coffee is almost ready." "What needs doing?" Amelia asked, not wanting to waste time. Lucas poured 2 cups of coffee and handed her one. "Direct." "I like that." He leaned against the counter, considering. "Chickens need feeding and eggs collected. Garden needs weeding. I need to ride out and check on the herd, but I will be back by midday. You think you can handle things here?" "I grew up on a farm," Amelia said. "Smaller than this, but I know my way around chickens and gardens." "Good." He showed her where everything was, the chicken feed, the egg baskets, the garden tools. Then he saddled his horse and rode out, leaving her alone at the ranch. Amelia threw herself into the work, grateful for something to occupy her hands and mind. The chickens were friendly enough, and she collected nearly 24 eggs. The garden was overgrown in places, but basically healthy, and she spent a pleasant hour pulling weeds and straightening the stakes that supported the tomato plants. By the time Lucas returned, she had also swept out the main house, prepared a simple midday meal of eggs and bread, and made a list of supplies she thought the kitchen needed. He looked around the clean kitchen with obvious surprise. "You did not have to do all this," he said. "You are paying me, are you not?" Amelia set a plate in front of him. "I intend to earn my keep." They ate together in a silence that was not quite comfortable but not entirely awkward either. Amelia was intensely aware of him across the table, the way he moved, the way he ate with the efficient hunger of a man who worked hard for his living. He caught her looking and raised an eyebrow. Something wrong. "I was just thinking," Amelia said carefully, "that you never asked me where I wanted to go. This morning at the trading post you just assumed I would come here." Lucas set down his fork. "You are right. That was presumptuous of me." He met her eyes. "So I will ask now. Where do you want to go, Amelia Zimmerman?" The question hung in the air between them, and Amelia realized she did not have an answer. Where did she want to go? Back to the life she had lost, forward to some unknown future. She thought about that moment at the trading post, the sick feeling of watching that wagon disappear, the certainty that she was utterly alone. "Anywhere but there," she said finally. "Anywhere but where I was." Lucas nodded slowly. "Then stay here as long as you need to. Until you figure out where you want to be." It was not a declaration or a demand, just a simple offer, and somehow that made it easier to accept. "All right," Amelia said. "I will stay. For now." The days began to settle into a rhythm. Amelia woke early, tended to the chickens and the garden, prepared meals, and kept the house clean. Lucas worked the ranch, riding out before dawn and often not returning until dusk. But when he was there, he treated her with a careful courtesy that made her feel respected rather than like hired help. They began to talk more over meals, tentative conversations that gradually revealed more about each other. Lucas had inherited the ranch from his uncle 3 years ago, after his own parents had died in a fire back in Missouri. He had come west looking for a fresh start, somewhere he could build something of his own, and had found it in these Utah mountains. "It gets lonely sometimes," he admitted one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sun set. "I knew it would when I chose this life, but knowing something and living it are different things." Amelia understood that better than he knew. "Why did you not find a wife?" she asked. "Surely there are women who would be interested in a ranch and a good man to run it." Lucas smiled, but there was something sad in it. "I suppose I have been too busy trying to keep this place running to think much about courting. And the women in Alta, well, they have their sights set on men with bigger spreads and fuller pockets." "Then they are fools," Amelia said, and was surprised by the vehemence in her own voice. He looked at her then, really looked at her, and she felt heat rise to her cheeks. There was something in his gaze that made her heart beat faster, an awareness that had been building between them over the past weeks but which neither of them had acknowledged. "You think so?" he asked quietly. "I do." Amelia stood up quickly, suddenly flustered. "I should clean up the kitchen." She hurried inside before he could respond, her hands shaking slightly as she washed the dishes. What was she doing? She had been here less than a month, and already she was developing feelings for her employer, for this quiet man who had shown her more kindness than her own family. It was foolish, dangerous even, to let herself care like this. But as the weeks turned into months, she found it increasingly difficult to guard her heart. Lucas was patient and kind, but he was also strong and capable, the kind of man who could gentle a skittish horse or repair a broken fence with equal ease. He taught her to ride properly, spending patient hours in the corral showing her how to sit a horse, how to read its movements, how to communicate with pressure and balance rather than force. "You are a natural," he said one afternoon, as she successfully completed a series of turns without his guidance. "Another few weeks and you will be ready to ride out with me to check the herd." Amelia felt a rush of pride at his praise. She had never been particularly athletic, but there was something about riding that called to something deep inside her, a sense of freedom and power that she had never experienced before. As autumn painted the aspen groves gold and red, Lucas made good on his promise and began taking her with him when he rode out to check on the cattle. They would leave at dawn, riding through the cool morning air, and return in the afternoon with the sun warm on their backs. Amelia learned to spot signs of illness in the cattle, to read the weather in the clouds, to move quietly so as not to spook the herd. She also learned more about Lucas himself. He was 26, 2 years older than she had initially guessed, and he had a brother somewhere in California who he had not spoken to in years. He was educated, having gone to school back in Missouri before his parents died, and he had a love of reading that matched her own. In the evenings, after the work was done, they would sometimes sit in the main house and read together, sharing the books from his small but well-chosen library. It was during one of these quiet evenings that Lucas finally asked the question she had been dreading. "What will you do when winter comes?" He looked up from his book, his expression serious. "I am not trying to rush you, but the snows come early and heavy in these mountains. Once they start, you will be trapped here until spring." Amelia set down her own book, considering her words carefully. "Would that be so terrible? Being trapped here, I mean. For you or for me, for either of us." Lucas was quiet for a long moment. "Amelia, I need to be honest with you. These past months having you here, they have been good, better than good. I find myself looking forward to coming back to the house in the evenings, knowing you will be there. I enjoy our conversations, our rides together, the way you hum while you work in the garden." He paused, and she could see him struggling with what to say next. "But I also know that I offered you employment, not anything more, and I do not want you to feel obligated to stay if that is not what you want." Her heart was pounding so hard she was certain he must be able to hear it. "And what if it is what I want? Is it?" Amelia stood up and crossed to where he sat, her courage nearly failing her with every step. "Lucas Pritchard, I came here with nothing. No family, no prospects, no hope. You gave me all of that back. But more than that, you gave me something I did not even know I was looking for." She took a deep breath. "You gave me a home, and somewhere along the way you became more than my employer. You became my friend, and now I think you might be becoming something even more than that if you would want that too." Lucas rose to meet her, his hands gentle as they framed her face. "I have wanted that since the first day I saw you standing at that trading post, trying so hard to be brave. But I did not want to take advantage, did not want you to feel like you had to care for me, because I gave you a place to stay." "I do not care for you because of that," Amelia said, her own hands coming up to rest on his chest. "I care for you because you are good and kind and strong, because you make me laugh and you listen when I talk and you see me as a person, not as a burden or an obligation. I care for you because I cannot help it." He kissed her then, soft and sweet, and Amelia felt like she was finally coming home after a long journey. When they pulled apart, both of them were smiling. "I suppose this means you are staying for the winter," Lucas said, and there was joy in his voice. "I suppose it does," Amelia agreed. "But Lucas, I need you to understand something. I will not be anyone's kept woman. If I stay, if we do this, I need us to do it properly." "You mean marriage?" "I do." Lucas grinned. "Amelia Zimmerman, you are a scandalous woman." We have only just kissed for the first time and already you are proposing to me." She swatted his arm, laughing. "I am being practical. If we are going to be snowed in together all winter, I want to do it as your wife, not your employee. Then I suppose I had better make it official." Lucas dropped to one knee, taking her hand in his. "Amelia Zimmerman, would you do me the honor of becoming my wife? I cannot promise you riches or an easy life, but I can promise you my whole heart and my very best effort to make you happy every day for the rest of our lives." "Yes," Amelia said, tears streaming down her face. "Yes, absolutely yes." They rode into Alta the next morning to speak with the circuit preacher who came through once a month. He was an older man with kind eyes who asked them only a few questions before agreeing to marry them the following week, giving them time to make arrangements, and for Lucas to ride to the nearest town to buy a ring. The wedding was small, held in the main room of the trading post with the owner and his wife as witnesses. Amelia wore her mother's best dress, which she had carefully preserved in her carpetbag, and Lucas wore a new suit that made him look almost unbearably handsome. They spoke their vows in the late afternoon light, promising to love and honor each other, and when the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Amelia felt a joy so complete it was almost frightening in its intensity. They rode back to the ranch as the sun was setting, and Lucas carried her over the threshold of the main house, which was now their house, their home together. That night, as they lay in each other's arms, Amelia thought about how much had changed in just a few months, how a moment of abandonment and despair had led her to this place of love and belonging. "What are you thinking?" Lucas asked, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her shoulder. "I am thinking that I should probably thank my stepbrother," Amelia said. "If he had not left me at that trading post, I never would have met you." Lucas pulled her closer. "I prefer to think that we would have found each other somehow, maybe not that day, but eventually. Some things are just meant to be." "You are a romantic," Amelia teased, "only with you." The winter came early and fierce, just as Lucas had warned. The snows started in late October and did not let up for weeks. They were indeed trapped, the roads impassable, the world reduced to the small circle of the ranch and the white silence of the mountains. But Amelia had never been happier. She and Lucas spent the long winter days working together, tending the animals, keeping the fires burning, reading and talking and learning each other in 1,000 small ways. Lucas taught her to play chess, and she taught him the songs her mother had sung. They made plans for the spring, discussing how they might expand the herd, whether they should plant more in the garden, what color to paint the shutters on the house, and they fell deeper in love with every passing day. Amelia had not known it was possible to feel so much for another person, to want someone's happiness more than her own, to find such joy in simple things like watching him shave in the morning or feeling his arms around her at night. "I never want to leave this place," she told him one evening as they sat by the fire. "I never want to be anywhere but here with you." "Funny," Lucas said, pulling her into his lap. "I seem to remember you saying you wanted to be anywhere but here when we first met. That was different. Then here meant alone and abandoned. Now it means home and loved and exactly where I am supposed to be." "I like the sound of that," Lucas said and kissed her. When spring finally came, melting the snow and turning the meadows green again, they emerged from their winter cocoon ready to build their life together in earnest. Lucas was right about Amelia being a natural with horses, and together they broke and trained 2 young geldings to add to their string. The garden flourished under Amelia's care, producing more vegetables than they could eat, which they sold or traded in Alta. As summer returned, hot and golden, Amelia realized she was pregnant. She told Lucas one evening as they sat on the porch watching the stars come out, and the joy on his face made her cry. "A baby," he said wonderingly, his hand on her still flat stomach. "Our baby." "Amelia, you have made me the happiest man alive. We made this together," she reminded him. "This baby, this life, all of it, we are a team, you and I." "The best team," Lucas agreed and held her close as the night deepened around them. The pregnancy was not easy. Amelia was sick for the first few months, barely able to keep anything down, and Lucas hovered over her with worried attention until she finally snapped at him to stop treating her like she was made of glass. But as the months passed and her body changed, she found a deep contentment in carrying their child, in knowing that she and Lucas were creating a family together. They prepared the small cabin for the baby, the same cabin where Amelia had spent her first night on the ranch. Lucas built a cradle from pine wood, carving it with careful attention to every detail, and Amelia sewed tiny clothes and blankets, her stitches small and precise. "You hope for a boy or a girl?" Lucas asked her one afternoon as she worked. "I do not care," Amelia said honestly. "As long as the baby is healthy, I will be happy. But if you want to know the truth, I have been dreaming of a son. A little boy with your eyes and your smile. Or a daughter with your courage and your kind heart," Lucas countered. "Either way, we will be blessed." The baby came in late winter, during a howling snowstorm that trapped them completely at the ranch. There was no possibility of getting a doctor or a midwife, and Amelia gave birth with only Lucas to help her. It was long and difficult and terrifying for both of them, but when their son finally arrived, red-faced and squalling, they both wept with relief and joy. "He is perfect," Lucas said, cradling the tiny bundle with infinite care. "Amelia, look at what we made. He is absolutely perfect." They named him Daniel, after Lucas's father, and from the moment he entered the world, he became the center of their universe. Amelia had never known she could love someone so completely, so fiercely, and watching Lucas with their son filled her with a tenderness that sometimes felt almost too big to contain. Daniel was a happy baby, quick to smile and laugh, and as he grew, it became clear he had inherited the best of both his parents. He had Lucas's dark hair and Amelia's green eyes, and a sunny disposition that made everyone who met him smile. Life settled into a new rhythm, busier and more chaotic than before, but filled with so much love that Amelia sometimes could not believe this was her life. The ranch was thriving, their herd growing steadily, and they had even hired a young man from town to help with the heavy work, freeing Lucas to spend more time with his family. When Daniel was 2, Amelia found herself pregnant again. This time it was easier, her body knowing what to expect, and she gave birth to a daughter in the spring, when the meadows were full of wildflowers. They named her Sarah, and she was dark-haired and dark-eyed like her father, with a serious expression that made them both laugh. "She looks like she is already judging us," Lucas said, gazing down at his daughter with adoration. "She probably is," Amelia replied. "Girls are wiser than boys, you know." "Present company accepted, of course," Lucas teased, and she threw a pillow at him. The years passed in a blur of work and love, and the everyday miracles of watching their children grow. Daniel learned to ride almost before he could walk, and Sarah proved to have her mother's way with growing things, spending hours in the garden examining bugs and plants with intense concentration. They added more children to their family, another son and then twin girls, until the ranch rang with the sound of children's laughter and the house was full of noise and life. It was not always easy. There were hard winters and dry summers, illnesses and accidents, and the thousand small worries that came with running a ranch and raising a family. But through it all, Lucas and Amelia remained steadfast partners, their love deepening with every year that passed. On their 10th anniversary, Lucas took Amelia back to the trading post in Alta where they had first met. It had changed over the years, the town growing as more people moved west, but the building itself was much the same. "You remember standing here?" Lucas asked, his arm around her waist. "You looked so scared and so brave at the same time. I knew right then that you were someone special." "I remember thinking you were crazy," Amelia admitted. "Some stranger offering to help me. I was certain you must have ulterior motives." "I did have ulterior motives," Lucas said. "I just did not know it yet. I was already falling in love with you standing right here in this spot." "Liar," Amelia said fondly. "You thought I was a charity case. I thought you were beautiful and fierce and in need of help, and I was right." He turned her to face him. "Amelia, these past 10 years have been the best of my life. You and our children, the life we have built together, it is more than I ever dreamed possible. I love you more today than I did the day we married, and I will love you more tomorrow than I do today." She kissed him there in the middle of the street, not caring who saw them. "I love you too. And Lucas, I need to tell you something. I am pregnant again." His whoop of joy startled several passers-by, and Amelia laughed as he lifted her off her feet and spun her around. "Another baby." "Amelia, you are amazing. You are absolutely amazing." This pregnancy resulted in twin boys, rambunctious and identical, who kept them running from dawn to dusk. Amelia sometimes felt like she was drowning in diapers and laundry and the endless demands of 7 children, but she would not have traded it for anything. This was the life she had dreamed of without knowing she was dreaming, the family she had ached for during those lonely years with her stepfamily. As their children grew older and more independent, Amelia and Lucas found themselves with more time to spend together. They still rode out together when they could, checking on the herd or simply enjoying the beauty of the mountains. They still sat together in the evenings, reading or talking or simply being in each other's presence. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I had not stopped at that trading post that day?" Lucas asked her once. Amelia considered the question. "Sometimes. I think about how close I came to being truly lost, to giving up hope completely. And then you appeared, like an answer to a prayer I had not even known how to pray." "I almost did not stop," Lucas admitted. "I was tired and I wanted to get home, but something made me look over at you and I could not just ride past." "I am glad you did not." Amelia took his hand. "Everything good in my life came from that moment. You, our children, this ranch, all of it. I was standing there thinking my life was over, and instead it was just beginning." The years continued to pass, bringing changes and challenges and joys. Their children grew up strong and capable, each one finding their own path in the world. Daniel took over more and more of the ranch operations as Lucas got older, and Sarah married a young doctor and moved to Salt Lake City. The other children scattered to various pursuits, but they always came home for holidays and special occasions, filling the house with noise and laughter once again. Amelia and Lucas grew old together, their hair turning gray, their bodies moving more slowly, but their love remaining as strong as ever. On quiet evenings, they would sit on the porch and watch the sun set over the mountains, and Amelia would think about that girl who had stood at the trading post so long ago, alone and afraid and certain her life was ruined. "What are you thinking about?" Lucas would ask, because even after all these years he could still read her moods. "I am thinking about how lucky I am," Amelia would reply. "How blessed we have been." "The luckiest," Lucas would agree and take her hand. They celebrated their 50th anniversary, surrounded by children and grandchildren, and even a few great-grandchildren, the house bursting with family. Lucas had wanted to do something grand, but Amelia had insisted on keeping it simple, just a meal together and the people they loved most in the world. 50 years, Lucas said in his speech, his voice shaking with emotion. 50 years since I saw this beautiful, stubborn woman standing alone at a trading post, and I made the best decision of my life to stop and ask if she needed help. She has been my partner, my best friend, my greatest love, and the mother of my children. She has made every day of these 50 years worth living, and I would do it all again in a heartbeat. Amelia wiped tears from her eyes as their family applauded. Later, when everyone had gone to bed and they were alone together in the house that had been their home for so long, she turned to Lucas. "Do you remember what you asked me that day at the trading post?" "I asked if you needed help," Lucas said. "No, later, when we were riding away, you asked me where I wanted to go," Lucas smiled, "and you said anywhere but there." "I was wrong," Amelia said softly. "I did not want to be anywhere. I wanted to be here with you. I just did not know it yet." She took his hand, feeling the familiar calluses, the strength that was still there despite his years. "I have never wanted to be anywhere else, not for a single day of these 50 years. "Good," Lucas said, and kissed her as the stars came out above the mountains, "because I am not letting you go anywhere without me." They lived many more years together, watching their family grow and flourish, watching the ranch pass into the capable hands of their children and grandchildren. The world changed around them, new technologies and ways of life replacing the old, but the ranch remained, a constant in a changing world. When Lucas finally passed away at the age of 89, Amelia held his hand and told him she loved him one last time. She knew he heard her because he smiled, and there was peace in his eyes as he took his last breath. She grieved deeply, as one does when losing a partner of 63 years, but she did not sink into despair. Instead, she continued to live, to spend time with her children and grandchildren, to tend her garden and ride her horse and sit on the porch watching the sunsets that Lucas had loved so much. One afternoon, several months after Lucas's death, one of her great-granddaughters came to visit. She was a curious child of about 8, with dark hair and green eyes that reminded Amelia of herself at that age. "Great-grandma," the child asked, "how did you and great-grandpa fall in love?" Amelia smiled and pulled the girl onto her lap. "Well, it started at a trading post in Alta. I was standing there all alone, thinking my life was over, and your great-grandfather rode up and asked if I needed help." "And did you?" "I did. Very much. And when he asked me where I wanted to go, I told him anywhere but there. But what I should have said was that I wanted to go wherever he was going, because that was where I belonged." "That is so romantic," the girl sighed. "It was," Amelia agreed, "and it still is. Your great-grandfather gave me everything I ever wanted or needed. He gave me a home, a family, and a love that has lasted my whole life and will continue even now that he is gone. Do you miss him?" "Every single day. But I also see him in all of you in this ranch in these mountains. He is still here in everything we built together." The girl hugged her tight, and Amelia held her close, feeling the warmth of family, the continuation of the legacy she and Lucas had created together. Amelia lived to be 94 years old, and when she finally closed her eyes for the last time, she was surrounded by 4 generations of family in the house that had been her home for more than 70 years. Her last thoughts were of Lucas, of that day at the trading post, of the life they had built together from nothing but hope and hard work and love. She was buried next to him in the small cemetery on the ranch, under an aspen tree that turned gold every autumn. Their children placed a stone there with both their names and a simple inscription. Together they found home. And in the years that followed, their descendants would tell the story of how it all began, of the woman who was left at a trading post and the cowboy who asked her where she wanted to go, and how her answer had changed both their lives forever. It became a family legend, passed down through generations, a reminder that sometimes the worst moments of our lives can lead us to the best ones, and that love can be found in the most unexpected places. The ranch continued to thrive, remaining in the family for generations, and visitors would sometimes stop and ask about the two graves under the aspen tree. The family would smile and tell the story about Amelia and Lucas, about love and courage, and the life they built together in the wild mountains of Utah. And on quiet summer evenings, when the sun set over the mountains and turned the sky gold and red, people swore they could sometimes see two figures on horseback riding through the meadows, together as they had always been, home at last in the land they had loved, and the life they had created from a single moment of kindness on a hot summer day in 1878. The trading post in Alta where it all began eventually closed, replaced by newer buildings and modern businesses, but the family made sure a historical marker was placed there, telling the story of that fateful day when Amelia Zimmerman was abandoned and Lucas Pritchard stopped to help. It became a popular spot for tourists, this place where a great love story had begun, and people would stand there taking pictures and imagining what it must have been like, to be so alone and so afraid, and then to find hope in the form of a kind stranger. The ranch itself became a historical site eventually, preserved by the family as a working ranch and a testament to the pioneers who had built lives in these mountains. School children would visit and learn about what life was like in the Old West, about the hard work and the simple joys, about the love story at its center. And always, the family would emphasize the most important part of the story, that Amelia had been given a choice that day. Lucas had asked her where she wanted to go, and she could have said anywhere. She could have asked him to take her to the nearest big city to help her find passage to California or back east. But instead, without fully knowing why she had trusted him, had taken a chance on this quiet cowboy and his small ranch, and that choice had led to everything else. It was a reminder, the family would say, that sometimes the best things in life come from taking chances, from trusting in kindness, from being open to possibility even when everything seems hopeless. Amelia could have given up that day at the trading post. She could have sunk into despair and bitterness. Instead, she had chosen to keep going, to accept help when it was offered, to remain open to love and hope and new beginnings. And Lucas, for his part, had chosen to stop that day. He had been tired, and probably wanted nothing more than to get home to his empty house and his simple dinner and his quiet evening. But he had seen a woman in need and he had stopped, had offered help without expecting anything in return, and that simple act of kindness had changed both their lives forever. Their great-great-great-grandchildren would grow up hearing these stories, would internalize these lessons about kindness and courage and love. And some of them would look at their own lives and their own choices and think about Amelia standing at that trading post, about the moment when everything could have gone differently, about how one decision, one moment, one act of compassion had rippled forward through time to create all of them. The land itself seemed to remember them. The meadows where they had ridden together, the house where they had raised their children, the mountains they had loved, all of it held their memory like the earth holds water. And on certain days, when the light was just right and the wind was just so, it was easy to imagine them there still, young and in love, riding together through their beautiful valley, home at last in every sense of the word. The story of Amelia and Lucas became more than just a family legend. It was written down, published in local histories, shared in museums and historical societies. It became one of those stories that people loved to tell, about true love and second chances, about the Old West and the people who had tamed it, about finding home in the most unexpected places. But for the family, it was always more than just a story. It was their foundation, their beginning, the moment when everything started. Every holiday gathering, every family reunion, every birth and wedding and funeral, all of it traced back to that hot summer day in 1878 when a woman stood alone at a trading post and a cowboy stopped to help. And so the legacy lived on, generation after generation, a testament to the power of love and kindness, and the simple human courage it takes to trust in tomorrow when today seems impossible. Amelia and Lucas would have been amazed, probably, to know how far their story would reach, how many lives they would touch, how many people would find inspiration in their love. But perhaps they would not have been surprised at all. Because they had lived it, had felt the power of that connection from the very beginning, had known that what they found together was something rare and precious and worth preserving. They had built their life on a foundation of trust and respect and genuine affection, and they had tended it carefully through all the years they had together, never taking it for granted, always grateful for the gift they had been given. And in the end, that was what made their story so powerful. Not that they had lived a perfect life without struggles or hardships, because they certainly had not. Not that their love had been effortless or easy, because real love never is. But that they had chosen each other, every single day, through good times and bad, through joy and sorrow, through the mundane routine of daily life and the extraordinary moments that punctuated it. They had been partners in every sense of the word, building their life together stone by stone, decision by decision, day by day. And what they had built had lasted not just their lifetimes but beyond, influencing and shaping everyone who came after them. The ranch stood as a physical reminder of that legacy, but the true inheritance they left was something intangible. It was the knowledge that love is possible, that kindness matters, that sometimes the best things in life come from the worst moments, if we are brave enough to stay open to possibility. And so the story ended where it had begun, with a woman alone at a trading post and a cowboy who stopped to ask if she needed help. But it also never really ended at all, because the ripples of that moment continued forward, touching lives that Amelia and Lucas would never know, creating connections and possibilities that stretched far beyond their small ranch in the Utah mountains. Their love story became part of the landscape itself, woven into the fabric of the place they had called home, enduring and constant as the mountains that surrounded it. And that, perhaps, was the most fitting tribute of all, that their love had become as eternal and unchanging as the land itself, a testament to what two people could build together when they chose love over fear, hope over despair, and each other over everything else. In the meadow where Lucas had first brought Amelia all those years ago, wildflowers still bloomed every spring, gold and purple and red, painting the valley in colors that took your breath away. And visitors to the ranch would stand there and look out at the view and understand, perhaps for the first time, why Amelia had chosen to stay, why she had answered anywhere but here, and ended up finding that anywhere was really right here in this place, with this man, building this life. It was a story about finding home, about finding love, about finding yourself when you thought you were lost forever. And it was a true story, which somehow made it even more powerful, because it meant that such things were possible, that love like that could exist in the real world and not just in fairy tales. The family made sure the story was preserved accurately, with all its complexity and humanity intact. They did not turn Amelia and Lucas into perfect saints, or their love into something impossible to achieve. Instead, they honored them by telling the truth, that they had been real people who made real choices, who had their struggles and their doubts, who had worked hard and loved deeply and built something lasting together. And that truth was more inspiring than any fairy tale could ever be, because it meant that anyone could do what they had done, could find what they had found, if they were brave enough to take the chance, to trust in kindness, to believe that tomorrow might be better than today. The sun set over the ranch one more time, as it had thousands of times before, painting the sky in colors that seemed almost too beautiful to be real. The house stood quiet now, the descendants having gone home, but it was not empty. It held the memories of everyone who had ever lived there, who had ever loved there, who had ever called it home. And somewhere in that collection of memories, Amelia and Lucas lived on, forever young, forever in love, forever riding together through the mountains they had loved, together at last and always, home in every sense of the word.